I'm so excited to have this opportunity to take a few minutes to speak with my dear friend, Dr. Colleen Carroll. Colleen works with families who are struggling with screen time. And in today's day and age, I am having a hard time finding any families that are not struggling with the child's decision to want to be on the screen, and then what that's keeping them from, the things that they're not getting into, and even, how that can be detrimental just in and of itself. And so, Colleen, I'm just really happy to have you here. Thank you so much. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about why we need to be concerned about this. I think there is a general awareness that we do need to have some limits to this, but I love hearing what you have to share.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarica, for having me here. I'm really excited to be on your show and talking about this topic that's so dear to my heart. You really nailed it, why it's a problem. And the problem is that screens are addicting, mostly the video game type of screens. So, there's different levels of addiction, and certainly games like Minecraft and World of Warcraft are the most highly addictive ones. But any kind of a screen that a child becomes so intent on playing that game and choosing to do that over all of the other healthier activities, including family time, time with friends, playing outside, reading a book. When screens start to take over and the choice becomes a screen rather than all those other healthy activities, that's a problem for so many reasons. And I think parents kind of generally understand that my child is not choosing to do the things that are normal at this age, and we'd like them to. And without those skills, without being able to practice communicating with friends and talking with family members and getting outside and playing a game of basketball, they're not getting the exercise they need. They're not getting communication that they need. And what they're getting from screens instead is instant gratification that keeps feeding itself. And so that's why it's so addicting. And so we want to try to reverse that. So kids, I'm not saying that they can't have any screen time, because that would be unrealistic in today's era. But as parents, I work with them to help monitor and set boundaries around it so that kids can have a very full life that they deserve.
I think that's exactly it. It's the balance that we need to bring to the situation. And I know in our family, one of my children, she can kind of take or leave the screen. She does a little Minecraft, but she's not hooked into it. Whereas with my other child, he really, really, really enjoys that time. And for me as a parent, it's something that I have a hard time reconciling at times, the proper amount of time, because he excels amazingly in his schoolwork. He is kind and polite and thoughtful to people. And yet, if given his druthers, and he's also a good athlete, but if he were given his druthers, he would want to be on that screen, watching sports videos or, playing a sports game, way more than wanting to be out and actually shooting hoops. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to hear what you have to say about this, Colleen, around amount of time. That, I think, is an important kind of marker for us.
Sure. It's a great question. And there are guidelines out there that have changed actually recently, that have from the health departments that create the guidelines for these things around children. And they've actually lessened the amount of screen time than they used to say was healthy or was okay. And I don't have them all memorized, because I think what's really important is to know your child. And like you said, your child is already into sports and doing things that are productive and healthy. And therefore, your child may be able to handle 2 hours plus of the screen time in the evening without that addictive addiction kind of taking over, where another child who may have either more propensity for addiction, which is possible, or is just not those choices and do some of the healthier activities, making that addictive quality is really, he's able, or he or she is actually able to control it less. And that's not an opinion or I'm not really making a statement about the child. It's just that everybody's brain is different. So children's brains will be able to handle it differently. And also, screen time is a very adult type of activity. In other words, monitoring it and managing it as a child is very difficult, because it's really something that even adults have problems with. Like, how often do we see people in their 20s, 30s, 40s and up on their phones all the time, or not managing how much Facebook time they're using? Right. So we're asking kids to make responsible decisions at 10, 11, 12, even 17 that they're still not wired maturity wise to be able to do. So I suggest that parents really check in with their own child, see if their behaviors have changed, if they're becoming more aggressive, more melancholy, if they have shut their friends out, if they've shut their family members out, and try to adjust accordingly. Because if they're doing that on 2 hours of screen time, at 17 years old, maybe that's too much. If they've got 2 hours of screen time at 14 or 10 or 12, but they're wonderfully happy and they're doing productive things, well, then maybe that's working for you. So I think I personally, though, don't like more than the 2 hour mark. And for younger kids, like 12 and under, I would say 1 hour at the most. Parents also need to remember that during the school week, kids are on screens at school, even though they're educational games almost all day in some capacity. They might be in small groups, they might be doing some testing, they might be having some free time or recess, and they're able to do games then. And so there are many hours during the daytime that in most school districts, particularly public schools, but a lot of private schools also, that they're on screen. So you need to add those hours plus the hours they're on at home to really get the full picture of how many hours a day on screens they are.
Boy, that's a big one. It really is. And I just think of the physical impact on the line of sight and how the body holds itself in that physical situation when you are on a screen. I mean, I spend a fair amount of time working on my computer, when I'm away from working with patients. And I have to really manage how I hold my body, but I have that awareness, whereas a child doesn't. And they can really begin to get into holding patterns in their physical state, as well as, again, what it does to their vision. And so these are kind of outlier issues that, don't get into the social structure, but are nonetheless incredibly important as that child develops. And also the tracking in their brain.
Absolutely. I can add to that too, because I just came back from my chiropractor earlier today because I see one for my own issues of lifetime of, back issues and so on. And some of that definitely is a daytime computer job, where I'm on as a coach all day and into the evenings with people where we do a lot of online work because I can't service clients internationally if I'm not doing it through the technology. So I don't want to be a hypocrite, but that's the way of the world.
It is.
And my chiropractor says to me that he's seeing kids today and he never used to see children. And when he talks to parents, it's because of their propensity to be hung over a screen for hours at a time.
That's right.
So that's true. And also to point out sleep problems. So kids are having sleep issues and they're not sleeping full night. And a lot of times it's because the blue light from screens is interrupting their sleep, because anytime after 3 p.m. or so, it's like caffeine. It keeps you up at night.
It does. And that is such a big part of helping the body to heal, recover, take care of the cerebral spinal fluid. It's the time when our body really does its repair. And if we are doing this thing of keeping ourselves engaged with light at this close proximity and in that shade of color, it is something that in our brain's design is not going to know what to do with that information other than say, oh, it's time to still be up, alert, and awake. And so I really love that you pointed that out as well, because boy, that's a big one too. It's really a big one. And, Colleen, I know you have worked with so many different families with this. I'd love to hear an example of, how you've seen success with this.
Great. Thank you for asking that question, because there is a light, right? There are lots of tips and strategies that I can give parents that are very helpful. Some take more time, some take a little bit more commitment, and some are super easy. So I'll give you a couple of super easy ones right now.
Great.
And for example, I like to talk to parents about creating a reader-friendly home. And, in general, I mean a healthy home that establishes healthy habits, but because I'm a literacy expert in my career and I've, love reading, and I really think that of all the options that kids have that are similar to a screen, a book in hand can be a much healthier choice. So I like to talk about creating this reader-friendly home, which means an environment where kids choose to read instead of to pick up a screen at least part of the time.
Great.
And in doing so, we're breaking, some unhealthy habits to create healthy habits and really establish some different neural connections that are much better for the brain and help them be lifelong, help them pursue a lifelong habit that's very very helpful to them. So one such opportunity would be to just make sure that you have books all over the home and check yourself for how many screens you have all over the home. So, I'll do virtual walkthroughs online with parents of their home where they're taking videos of or live like Zoom videos of their home and showing me, okay, there's a TV in every room. There's an iPad in every room. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has a laptop. And when you count up the number of screens that are in every home, we're talking about sometimes anywhere between 14 to 20 screens in an average home. And that's really shocking to most people because they don't go around counting their screens all the time.
Nope.
But when we look to see how many books we have in the home or where are the books or any other reading material, so magazines, newspapers, pamphlets, things that would be fun to read, where are they? Oftentimes, magazines are kind of a messy thing. A lot of people will clean them up and put them away or throw them out. The books might be like on the third floor if you have a house where they're kind of put away because they collect dust. But the screens are pretty and they're neat and they're nice, black and shiny, so we leave those out.
Yep.
And I try to help parents flip that model because when your screens are out, you go to the screen, but when the books are out, we often go to books more. And can they create a little environment that's like a cozy reading nook, that's what you do there. You're not allowed to bring a screen there, but it's got beanbag chair and decorated by the child with their artwork. And, it's the place where there's good lighting and maybe soft music and a hot cup of hot cocoa if it's cold out, depending on where you live. And it's inviting and warm. And a child would want to read in that spot. And so parents who try that, they're often kind of incredulous that would actually work, but they need to remember that kids like safety. And even older kids, and I say kids, I kind of mean all the way up through their teen years, all humans do, right? We crave safety, we crave coziness, we crave, and we also crave zen and quiet time, even though we don't always know it.
Yes.
So, and I know you would agree with me on that, right? Because you have a higher awareness of that. But when we create those places, if we didn't have them before, when we create them, we offer them to children, and then we set some boundaries around that, like they have to go there without a screen, and we'd like to see them there, X amount of time during the day, and we allow them to decorate it so that it becomes their spot. Then all of a sudden, the dynamic shifts about how kids use them and what they choose to do there, like reading or writing. Journaling is great too. So anything like literacy based. So I have this quick story for you. I have a parent of a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. And we were having this conversation about even her 4-year-old, she's feeling like is very addicted to screens. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's awfully young, but it does happen. And it is starting to happen more as iPads and cell phones are in everybody's hands now, not only adults' hands. So we had a quick conversation about creating a reader-friendly home and a safe environment for the kids to go to and someplace fun for the younger kids. Like sometimes they like a little bit of a tent-like structure. And she went home and she had been saving a teepee for her 4-year-old, I think, with her husband. They were going to give it to him for his birthday, but they went to the garage and pulled it out. And they set it up in the living room, I think, and it wasn't very big, this little tiny thing. And she said he hated to read books before, he would never read. So she crawled in first with a few books and he immediately crawled in after her, and they spent like 45 minutes in there reading books together for the first time ever.
Oh, that is
because she could never get him to sit before. And she was astonished that all it took was a teepee. They just needed to get inside the teepee and call that a safe space and a cozy spot to actually then do the thing that he had been avoiding for so long that was healthy. And so I touch base with her every once in a while, and she continues the happy stories that one little suggestion made changed so many things. So
I love
really
that.
Proud
that
of that moment.
So and you should be, and the mom should be, and the dad should be. That is wonderful. And it is. Sometimes it's that little extra step of creativity that shifts the dial on it. I love it. So, one of the things that you and I had discussed that I think is going to be really helpful is a little quiz. And it's a quiz that helps people to see, kind of where they might be with this issue and their family dynamic. And so I'm going to link that here. I'll have the link for folks to be able to take that quiz and kind of see where they land. So that's terrific, because this was kind of sprung up on us, it grew like mushrooms in a damp forest. All of a sudden the screens were ubiquitous. They are everywhere. They're always in our hands. And let's be completely honest, when we're out to eat, or if we're out in a public setting, or if we're traveling, it's very easy to let the kids be engaged on these screens. And so as the parents, the guardians of the children's welfare, we have to stay a little bit ahead of this. And so I'm excited to get that quiz into folks' hands and to keep people connected to your work, because this is incredibly important in the development of the children coming up now. And quite honestly, also in the continued development of the grown-ups and their
totally agree.
To relate.
Yeah. And what I love about the work that I do with families is, and I have learned this over time, I really started out really being very intent and let's change children's lives so that their trajectory is much healthier. But what we're all learning as we work together on this is we're also changing families and parents' lives, because they're becoming so much more aware of their own screen usage and their own unhealthy habits. So it's multifold, the benefits.
It is. It's up-leveling everybody. So that is terrific. Well, Colleen, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time on this. And I look forward to the questions that come up around this and folks just being connected to your work. Thank you for
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You bet.